What's going on everyone, Mike here, and in this video we're pitching the new Samsung Galaxy S5 against last year's flagship, the Galaxy S4. The truth is, not much has changed on this new generation. Samsung implemented a dreadful incremental upgrade policy with the S5. They slightly revamped the exterior, they upgraded the hardware and software, they've added a few new features and tweaks, and voila, a new product. But is the Galaxy S5 a much improved smartphone over the S4? And is it worth the upgrade if you already have the 2013 version of the Galaxy Heavyweight? Well, stick with me for the next few minutes and you'll find out. For starters, if you're a Galaxy S4 user, you might not appreciate that the Galaxy S5 has grown in size. It's both taller, wider and thicker, and it's about 15 grams heavier as well. At the same time, you'll probably like how the S5 feels in hand, especially if you sport your smartphones naked without any sort of bumpers on them. And that's because Samsung ditched the glossy hyperglazed plastic finishing we've seen on the S4's back for a softer, dimpled finish which resembles artificial leather. Now, don't get me wrong, the S5's rear plate is still made from plastic, but it feels better and makes the phone much grippier. The lateral chrome plastic strips have been slightly redesigned on the S5 as well, and the phone has an overall rectangular shape with less rounded corners. In other words, it borrows many design elements from the Galaxy Note 3. However, the S5 is IP67 certified, dustproof and water resistant, while the S4 was not. As a result, the USB 3.0 port on the lower lip is now covered by a plastic cap, and the removable rear plate has some rubber seals on the interior meant to protect the battery, card trays and connectors. That aside, the S5 packs the same ports and buttons as the S4, in pretty much the same places around the edges. It features the camera on the back, and just under it there's a new heart rate sensor, which pairs with an upgraded version of the S-Health app for more advanced activity tracking. On top of that, it's worth noting that the speaker is still placed on the S5's rear, like on the S4, and the sound quality has not been skewed by the waterproofing. However, at higher volume, the entire backplate vibrates strongly on this new phone, which can get quite annoying. Flipping the phones up, you'll notice fairly similar front faces on the two, with the screens taking much of the real estate here. The S5 does pack a slightly larger 5.1-inch screen though, as opposed to the 5.0-incher on the S4, but that alone does not justify the size bump. No, the lateral bezel is also wider on the S5 and the chromed rim around the glass a bit more pronounced. I appreciate the latter, as it will keep the screen safe from scratches when facing the phone down, but not the former. Getting more in depth with these screens, we'll find AMOLED panels on both Samsung smartphones with their pros and cons. The pixel density difference is marginal, as both sport the same 1920 by 1080 pixel resolution. However, I did note that the S5's panel is brighter and displays somewhat more natural colors. Having the professional photo mode selected on both of them, reds do look deeper on the S5 and whites do look cleaner. In other words, while on paper these two screens seem nearly identical, having them side by side shows a slight improvement for the new Galaxy S5. Screens aside, you'll find cameras, sensors and notification LEDs on both these phones' front faces, while below the screen sit the physical home buttons, flanked by two capacitive controls. Back to the right on both of them, and menu to the left on the S4, but multitasking on the S5, which brings the new Samsung's controls closer to stock Android. That leads to some other changes. Holding the power button pressed on the S5 launches Google Now, while on the S4 launched the multitasking app. As for the settings, they are now integrated within each app in the right upper corner, again similar to what we have with vanilla Android. However, before we move on, I have to tell you that the home button on the S5 now integrates a fingerprint sensor. You can use it to unlock the phone or perform other activities by swiping your finger vertically over it. The S4 lacked this feature, but as a side note, the home button is now noisier, clickier on the S5, at least on this unit I got to play with. That's only a minor inconvenience though, and you'll quickly get used to it. Let's turn our attention on the software in this too for a little bit. Both are running Android 4.4.2 KitKat with TouchWiz on top. However, the S5's version of the UI has seen tweaks, while the S4's version is inherited from previous Android iterations. Many things have changed actually, starting from the lock screen, continuing with the notification panel, the multitasking windows, the way you can customize the home screen, the app drawer and the settings. We'll talk in depth about all this in the review. For now, I can conclude that Android on the S5 looks better than any TouchWiz implementation before. It's overall flatter and simpler. However, there are still reminiscences of the older version, visible in the dialer, the messaging app and a few other places. In terms of performances, I can't really say that the S5 is faster than the S4. The S5 works somewhat smoother in general, but in some cases, the 2013 Galaxy actually outperformed the new unit. In fact, the S4 has gotten really good with the KitKat upgrade. Hardware-wise, the new Galaxy is more powerful than the older one, sporting a beefier processor and graphics, but the same amount of RAM, 2GB. Even so, if you're interested in benchmark results, you'll be happy to know that the S5 clearly outscores the S4 in Geekbench and Quadrant. I should also mention that we have the 16GB versions of both these phones here, and 12GB of those are available for your own content on the S5, but only 9GB on the S4, which again proves that the S5 packs a simpler, less cluttered OS with fewer bundled apps. Moving on, let's turn our attention on the cameras, as Samsung put a lot of effort on improving the S5 as a camera phone. There's a large sensor on the S5, a faster autofocus system that uses both phase and contrast detection, there's a revamped camera interface and a few new tweaks and shooting modes. Among them, the ability to shoot UHD video, the picture and video stabilization, the selective focus features, and so on. But how do these translate in everyday use? Well, for starters, the S5's camera is very fast. It shoots great video and brilliant stills in good light, colorful and detailed. The S4 does a good job in these conditions as well. However, the older Galaxy really struggled with poor light shots, especially if you did not want to use the flash. Well, the S5 still takes shaky pictures in these conditions, but not as often as the S4 did. And with picture stabilization turned on, the results are actually quite good. Anyway, I'll add some real-size pictures and side-by-side comparison in the written post on TLBHD, you'll find the link in the description below. Last but not least, there's the battery life. Samsung squeezed a slightly larger battery inside the S5, and they claim that the new phone will last 10 to 20% longer than the S4 each charge. I've got more or less the same results in practice. With average use, these phones will get you through the day and usually last till the end of the second day. If you'll push them, and especially if you'll pump up the screen's brightness, you should not expect more than 4 hours of screen time from the S4 and about 4.5 from the S5. Alright, time to wrap this up. All these things mentioned before add up to a single conclusion. The S5 does improve many of the S4's aspects and does offer a handful of new features and tricks. But there's nothing groundbreaking about it. There's no major change. In many ways, it looks like Samsung borrowed Apple's strategy, and the new Galaxy feels more like an S4S than an S5, as others have said before me. However, that's not unexpected and is not necessarily a bad thing either, as this new Galaxy has pretty much all it needs to stand proud next to its rival in 2014, but many of you might have expected more from it. At the end of the day, if you're in the market for any of these two, the S5 is worth your attention for the revamped looks, the extra features, the improved camera and the slightly longer battery life. But if you're looking to save some money, the S4 is still a versatile smartphone and is more compact than its follow-up, so it's definitely worth considering. With that in mind, it's time to end this video. Let me know what you think about these two Galaxy smartphones and whether the S5 is a worthy successor for the S4 or not. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, share it around so others will learn about what's changed on the new Galaxy handset, and of course, if you're interested in more details about the S5 and other popular smartphones, subscribe for my next updates. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.